Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Jai
Jai
Guru.
Guru. Welcome to minute 66 of Awake Minute by Minute podcast. I'll be your host today, and with me, or the usual, to Priyank and Mike, but we do have a guest with us today, Nita. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Yeah, really good to have you, Nita.
Thank
we've
you for
met.
having me on.
Yeah, very, very pleased to have you here. We've met a number of times in the London SRF Centre, so that's how I know you, and I presume the guys as well. Yeah, you're based in London, but maybe you would be able to tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a devotee or a Kriyaban of SRF?
Yeah, I'm a devotee and a Kriyaban too.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean
Nice.
anything. We're all struggling on it. Yeah, how did I find the path?
Do you think this is the first lifetime that you were a Kriyaban?
Probably, yeah. I think
that's a hard. Already with the hard questions.
That's a hospital pass question, Nita. Unanswerable.
Unanswerable. Well, or maybe answerable.
Oh yeah, maybe you know actually.
Well,
she just doesn't want to say.
Doesn't
want to reveal.
Do you think you were?
Okay. I think so. Yeah.
Nice.
They say you don't take to it so well unless you have a past connection. Yeah. And I personally, it was like duck to water when I came into reading Guruji's work and using his techniques that I've tried so many before that.
Oh, okay.
Interesting topic to kick off.
Yeah, what about you, Chris?
So I'm not a Kriyaban yet. I have been thinking about this. I've been,
then you definitely weren't a devotee in the past.
Definitely wasn't. the logic is definitely in place there. I found, so I just to answer this fully, I got on the path 2016, 17, and my life kind of went into crazy turmoil and crumbled and been building up again in the best way possible. And I was on a boat building the boat whilst I lived in it, and I've moved to Brazil, and I'm doing some intense stuff, and I guess that's my excuse as to why I haven't been able to commit, because primarily if you're a Kriyaban, you should be doing the lessons and doing your meditations and following the process every single day. And I'm quite a literal person in that sense. If I'm not doing that every single day, just to the letter, I don't want to sort of apply before I'm really disciplined in that sense. So my meditations can, 1 week be really good, and next week less so, just as a window into that life. But I am definitely on the verge of doing it. I wanted to do it for my 33rd birthday, which is in August next month. So I'm building towards the Kriyaban path. But yes, maybe not exactly in past lives, who knows? But anyway, enough about me. Nita, you were saying how you found the path.
Oh yeah. Again, like you said, when you go through stuff, asking questions and all of that, why, and then so then I went to an uncle's house and asking questions, and he showed me a book, and it wasn't autobiography of a yogi, but it was Man's Eternal Quest. And so I read one chapter. It was Be a Smile Millionaire. I can't even remember it now. I don't know what it was in there, but I tell you, I was stuck, and I was sort of chasing it. You know how you sort of chase the sounds or whatever it is. And then I was looking for the book. I couldn't find it. Then I looked on the internet. I found Be a Smile Millionaire, but I found the cassette. Back then it was cassettes. Yeah, and then I thought, oh no. And then I met that uncle again, about 5 years later, and he said, I said, yeah, the name of that book. And he said, Man's Eternal Quest. So and then I got, I got the trilogy, Divine Romance and Journey to Self-Realization. So I was trying to do it. So yeah. But funnily enough, all these years, I've only read Man's Eternal Quest. I haven't, because of accessibility, Divine Romance and Journey to Self-Realization I haven't got to. So, yeah.
Interesting. And I suppose there's a lot of books on Audible available. These books aren't available on Audible, presumably, yet, are they?
No. You know,
No.
SRS now has a readers group, because you know when you got problems turning pages and things like that, which I do, so they pay you up with a reader that reads for you and helps you read. So that's what I'm doing now. One's from France, one's from Israel. So it's really, really good. And so we've started Man's Eternal Quest. We're going to go to Divine Romance, Journey to Self-Realization. I also read with my uncle in LA. He's the one who got the whole family introduced it. So yeah, I think back then in 2003, I had some job that I hated, all this stuff. I mean, looking on the internet for meditation yoga, and I thought, oh, what? I was looking at the SRF website and all of Daya things, the old website. So I was just hooked again and reading, because just wanted to get on the plane,
Exactly, the Concorde, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So that's what you're gonna do, Chris. Get on.
No, I can't wait. I know. I keep saying to Yoga, I keep trying, talking to Yogananda, saying I'll get there, and I think the response is very much like supportive. So I'm very
Probably already are there.
confident. Okay, oh yeah, who knows? But Mike, we didn't get to ask you. What are you, some kind of hidden like past life monk?
Past life monk? I don't know. Maybe I must have had some kind of connection, because in this lifetime my parents were both Korean bonds, and I grew up in a retreat in Germany, so I kind of had it from all sides. So no way to escape.
Yeah,
I
nice.
was very fortunate to have devotees and Kriya Yoga in my life early.
Yeah, epic. And Nita, in terms of the documentary, Awake documentary, do you recall when you first saw it, or what your first impressions were?
I think I saw it on the computer first, the DVD. And I was just like this. I was just looking at it and I couldn't believe it. And then there were certain bits that Brother Chidananda, when he talks about how we're made of protons and atoms, but underneath that is all energy. So that really got me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did a good job. Yeah, really good job. And we've been doing a minute by minute analysis of it. And I think
I know.
there's just so much content in every single minute, and they've done a great job. Yeah. So we can delve into the minute then, shall we? But just before we do, this is a gear change this minute from the previous minutes. So we had very somber scenes in the previous minutes. We were talking about war and death, and of course the death of Sri Yukteswar, and the impressions really that it made on Paramahansa Yogananda. And really, the world was passing through a very difficult time with World War I, and we saw scenes of Hitler and Nazism rising in Germany. And Guruji, I suppose, in general, was suffering a little bit. So we talked a little bit in the last minute of Guruji sort of praying as to why there was so much suffering in the world, and World War I being kicked off. And he had some amazing revelations then. So go back and watch that minute if you want to hear more on that. But really, in this minute, we're gifted with some beautiful sequences of videos and images of Paramahansa Yogananda, SRF monks, as well as an ex-monk makes another reappearance. And yeah, we get to reflect on this period of time for Yogananda, which is, you know, Nita, to your point, there's just so much great content in this documentary,
Yeah,
and they've
you
done very
just can't
well.
get sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it. Yeah,
No, you just can't get enough, that's all.
exactly. Yeah, and so yeah, it's all accompanied by, you know, very uplifting, awe-inspiring music. So it's a really fun minute. So in the end of last minute and coming into this minute, we see text and some buildings appear, and it says, "Upon my return from India, my disciples surprised me with a seaside hermitage." And we see Yogananda taking a seat outside of this hermitage, overlooking the sea with another monk. I think maybe somebody can jump in to say who they think or know that is. Shaking of heads, because I wasn't sure myself.
Not in the book either, so we don't know.
Yeah.
If listeners, if you know who that is sitting with Guruji, then please do let us know. He's like a junior monk or something, isn't he? He's wearing grey. We don't know though.
Yeah, but the hermitage itself, like they have a picture and they zoom in on the picture, and then they show video footage of Yogananda, you know, taking a seat with this monk outside of the building, and it just looks so serene, doesn't it? So beautiful. So we can firstly discuss this hermitage, and it is Encinitas. And many people maybe listening in the US in particular may have visited Encinitas. So I haven't myself, but it's located on the Pacific coast, west coast, 100 miles of Los Angeles and 25 miles north of San Diego. And yeah, Mike, you've been there before, so maybe you want to jump in with a comment.
Yeah. It must have been a real change coming from India, going to what was like, we still have to imagine LA wasn't the city back then that it is now. It was way less people. And Encinitas at this point was very remote, right? There was San Diego was a town, Los Angeles was a town, and in between there was basically countryside and a beautiful coastline as well, of course. And so somewhere on that coastline, they bought this really big property on a bluff overseeing the Pacific Ocean. Very beautiful. And one of the things that was interesting that he said, he was surprised, right? The all-knowing master was surprised by his devotees. And there are those stories. I think Brother Ramananda, who was is a long-term monk at in Encinitas was, and he often told that story that all the people involved, they were praying to God to not reveal their thoughts to Guruji, so he wouldn't be able to read their thoughts, because that's what he would usually do, so that it would be a genuine surprise when he came. And he always said we will never know if he was actually surprised or not, but he had teary eyes when he saw it for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, there's this whole story where they were in the car with him, and they drove their usual way down to San Diego, and they drove past Encinitas like it wasn't there, and then they found some kind of reason to just drive back, and when they drove past it, Guruji noticed the property and said how nice it was, and yeah.
Yeah, I that's such a good story. Thanks for sharing it. I think I may have mentioned that I was told that he did something similar in London. He was walking Baker Street, and he kind of looked down the street and said, "Oh, it's, you know, how nice is it done?" You know, made a comment to the people that he was with. So that's amazing that people were praying so that he wouldn't be able to read their thoughts. Oh, it's so good.
He's certainly capable of acting surprised, even if he wasn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of tongue in cheek.
Yeah, Mike read my mind though, because I was going to ask the question: can a master or an avatar ever really be surprised at any incident that manifests in his following incarnations?
Well, didn't he talk about seeing images of future headquarters in India, right? So.
Yeah, he said he saw in his mind's eye when he was with Sri Yukteswar, he saw a sylvan retreat or a forest retreat, one on a mountain top or a hilltop and one by the ocean. And obviously that is Ranchi, Mother Center, Mount Washington, and Encinitas. And Sri Yukteswar was like, that's for later, focus on what you're doing now.
Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, one answer to the question is definitely the story between Babaji and Sri Yukteswar, right? Where Babaji met Sri Yukteswar at the Kumbh Mela, but was hiding his true identity from him. And Sri Yukteswar was, oh yeah, I met this nice young man.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe he acted surprised. Maybe not. Maybe Divine Mother intervened and actually hid it from him.
Ooh, interesting. But then if Divine Mother's like playing like hide and seek, then he'd be very worried, wouldn't he? Like all of a sudden he can't see something that's a blind spot in his rearview mirror.
But the intuitive knowing would be so strong that I'm sure even if that was the case, that it would be a reassurance to follow quite quickly. No, it's funny, Mike. You know, it is correct. The countryside, what was the countryside, Encinitas between San Diego, LA, is now really built up. From what I could see, I YouTube searched Encinitas, and I found this rather shaky footage of a devotee like there walking through Encinitas building, and he had turned around and zoomed in, I believe, on the other side of the Encinitas building, and there was just buildings, you know, as far as you could see, with streets as far as you could see. Is it quite built up now, and a bit of a hotspot, Mike?
It's still like downtown Encinitas is still preserved it feels like a small town. Obviously the property prices there have exploded, so it becomes more and more exclusive. But like the hinterland is very built up now, and it's basically all part of the commuter belt into San Diego. But it feels like, especially Southern California in general, they love low density housing. So you don't find many apartments there. You find houses all next to each other, basically. Close to the ocean, you find maybe a few apartments, but there's also nice cafes there, and it's a really nice walkable area. It feels a lot more relaxed than, for example, LA. Where everything is so busy. It's more like a place where you can relax and enjoy the nature.
It looks beautiful, really, from what I could see. I would love to go one day, whenever COVID allows and various restrictions are lifted, of course. But really, this was a surprise gift from his disciple in particular, Rajarsi Janakananda. So this in particular was a gift from him. And this is really where Yogananda was reported to write the autobiography of a yogi and other writings. So he must have spent a considerable amount of time here. So when he returned, of course, this is what we're going to get into. Yogananda really went into a different mode, mode of meditation and various things in front of his devotees. There's a picture that follows this scene, and it's one of the most impactful pictures that I can recall seeing of Guruji. But before we get into that, jumping ahead a little bit, we do see a close-up of Guruji sitting outside Encinitas, gazing into the distance over the sea, and we have a voiceover of Brother Chidananda, and it's one of a few voiceovers, so we're spoilt for choice in this episode. And he says after his guru died, something shifted in him. He was just experiencing these profound states of consciousness, and I thought, what is he talking about here exactly? do we think? Was this by choice? Was Yogananda coming back consciously, really deciding, okay, I'm going to kind of ramp things up a little bit? And maybe I was thinking to myself, was Sri Yukteswar working with him in the astral field? Was he getting support that maybe he hadn't been getting before? Or was he having people influence him that way? Priyank, what do you think?
So in one way or the other, you know, the guru lineage, the head of the lineage is the head of the lineage in terms of responsibility for devotees. So whilst Sri Yukteswar was around, Yogananda was obviously his disciple, and we were all Yogananda's disciples, but essentially we would go to Sri Yukteswar if he was still around, because he's the head of our church, if you will. So when but then when Sri Yukteswar passes and, you know, takes responsibility in the Hiranyaloka, then now Yogananda then takes this responsibility, and then the urgency of the work that needs to happen, and, you know, the lives he needs to touch, then becomes that much more important, or like amplified. And hence then, you know, like things like getting us books like the Autobiography of a Yogi, or, you know, the Second Coming of Christ, or the God Talks with Arjuna, all these things that need to happen. Really, he has to place all his energy into happening. And, you know, building the temples, you know, Encinitas is the starting point, but Lake Shrine and all the other temples that needed to be built at the time become that much more like amplified in their importance. So yeah.
My another thought that I had on this was, we talked last week about pain and suffering, and one comment that Yogananda said, that the intuitive knowing, or, you know, maybe God, when he was conversing inwardly with himself, he said that pain is a prodding, to kind of coax you into remembering, like, you know, what you are. And I wonder that the pain and suffering that Yogananda had experienced, you know, with everything that was happening in the world, at his Guruji passing, was that then used as fuel for him to really kind of open up a new dimension? Like when his mother passed, he was very, very impacted by that, and maybe that was again fuel. And Guruji talks in his lessons about using emotions to mix the emotions, with, you know, more divine emotions, positive emotions, and then that can be used properly. Mike?
I think this is kind of the message that the movie is trying to convey, and I think that's also how it was. And I think that the comparison to him losing his mother is also a very good one, because he loved his guru so much, so in his presence he kind of almost came back into his old role as being the disciple of Sri Yukteswar, right? But then when Sri Yukteswar left his body, then this part of his life was gone forever. And now he would actually look, I think he changed his gaze from backward, his beautiful days in the hermitage of Sri Yukteswar, to forward, what do I have left to do in this incarnation? And that's kind of when he went back to America, he was like, I have a job to finish, let's focus on that. And we mentioned the states, the blissful states that he went into afterwards. And I feel like his remaining job wasn't just writing all the books, opening all the temples, but also burning all the karma that needs to be burned before he goes home.
Interesting, yeah. I would love to hear what Yogananda would say on this. Of course. But I think all of these things may well be factors, right? So we have that really thought-provoking kind of comment by Brother Chidananda that Guruji was, you know, kicking things into a new gear. And we have the ex-monk Leo Cox, who we've talked about before in the show. Interesting character. He's sitting, and we have a video footage of him talking about this, and he's talking about Guruji, and he says his eyes just turned glassy, and that he withdrew and he was gone. in one moment to another, and he did quite a funny whooshing sound along with it. And following that, following Leo, we see this image of Guruji sitting very finely dressed, outdoors, eyes open, gazing upward, possibly in meditation, and his eyes are glowing in the picture. And my first thought was, is it like some kind of imagery or photography trick, or the lights catching it in a certain way, or have they enhanced it themselves? But nonetheless, like it was an incredibly impactful image for me, very, very strong image for me. I wonder, maybe Nita, if you care to share your thoughts on this. You watched this recently. Do you remember this scene? Do you remember this picture? And what did you make of it?
It's amazing, because you look to that and you think, wow, this is my guru, and you just, I mean, as Mrinalini Mata said, you feel awed. You just, humbled is one word, but you just feel so privileged, and you just cannot believe how you can be so worthy of such a guru, such a, my God, he was sent for me, really? It's just, yeah, it's a privilege, and you just feel so blessed that you could be part of this, relationship. So it's sometimes words can't describe, that's how you feel.
Very emotive picture for me, just seeing this, thinking, if he's next to me, what could be achieved? So it really fills you with confidence, I think. So yeah, amazing picture. So we have another voiceover of Sri Daya Mata, and she says that oftentimes this state that Yogananda would go into would give concern to the younger ones. His heart would stop beating, and he actually instructed them that whenever he would go into samadhi, that they could bring him out of it by chanting Om in his right ear, which is really incredible, isn't it? There's so many little bits there to pick apart. But Priyank, do you want to jump in with a comment?
Firstly, whenever there's some people at the center that meditate with their eyes like open and their pupils like up high up there, and it's pretty scary, isn't it? And this image is there's images of Guruji doing that. There's a few images of him doing that, and these are some of them, and obviously they're equally scary. You certainly wouldn't want to get him out of that state, would you? And so like these instructions that Daya Mata got of chant Om in his right ear would seem to be the most gentlest way to like approach a master in that state. But also that instruction of getting him out of samadhi is also building us up for later when he took his mahasamadhi, when he didn't return to his physical frame. That this is what they tried back then, and it's preparing us for that mahasamadhi that's coming, I think, is why they've added it here. And this is why the music is so intense as well. It's a complete change of tone from the previous sorrowful music that we'd had just now in the previous minute of Sri Yukteswar's passing.
Mike?
Yeah, first of all, this is a supernatural experience, not just for Guruji, but for everyone around him, right? This is not normal, that someone leaves their body, the body becomes cold, the heart stops beating, and then you can call them back by singing Om. This is not normal. So this is definitely in the realm of I don't know,
phenomenal.
Yeah, supernatural like things to happen, but also it must have been at one. So for the people involved there, something that impressed them, strengthened their faith, right? And at the same time, it's like what Priyank said, he was getting them ready that they will have to run the show without him at some point, right? So he was still there, but he was already half gone at a certain point. And as time went on, he was more and more in those blissful states for long periods of time, right?
Interesting. I think I would offer a counter to what you said, Mike. That this is actually the norm for humans, and that we live in an abnormal time.
Sure.
I would say that much.
Yeah.
When we get into the full swing of things, because the highest yugas, right? That it's like the longest period of time in this cycle of yugas, right? So yeah, we're going through the shorter, kind of more turbulent times, where this is very abnormal. This is very strange and scary. These words are very interesting that we're using in and of themselves, right? Scary is, I thought when they, we will talk about Leo Cox's comment very, very shortly, but when you say scary, Priyank, I wonder if it's like an analogy of, if you see like an electrical unit of sorts, very powerful electrical unit, like you would walk past an electrical unit that would feed an industrial electrical unit, and you would be kind of frightful to go near it. Is that the kind of frightful like scariness that you're referring to? Because he can shock you.
There's a hint of that, but no, I'm thinking much more on the supernatural kind of realm. Like you wouldn't like, sometimes you're fearful of the unknown in terms of like what's beyond the darkness, and that is certainly the feeling I got, especially because in this image he's away from the sun. He's facing away from the sun, so his face is in darkness, but his eyes are lit, I don't know, by some unknown source of light, and it's just quite astonishing picture.
Yeah, there's a funny story, maybe we can share it. Sadhguru talked about this, where he went into some samadhi state with scientists around him, and they were poking and prodding and measuring his brain waves, and they said, to each other, what's going on, that this man has simply died in front of us, and they were whacking his knee at his joint, almost where the funny bone is or something, and they were poking and prodding so much that eventually he thought, okay, well, they're kind of, they're pushing it too far, and he said, like, oh, have I done something wrong? And then they were just astounded that he came back to life, so to speak. That they thought he was clinically dead. So they were really frightened, apparently, these scientists that came to analyze him. So it probably, yes, would be a scary moment for that way of thinking, to see a body go cold and the heartbeat stop. But Yogananda did talk about this, I think with Sri Yukteswar, right? When he was sharing a room with Sri Yukteswar. Yeah. And Sri Yukteswar would wake up in the morning and then meditate and go into samadhi states, lying horizontal, and his heart would stop, right? And Yogananda would be
grab his nose to see if he's breathing.
Yeah. Which is what an experience, right?
He's like budding experimentalists or something like that.
Yeah. Such a good story. So moving, a question I would have for you guys is, why would they want to bring him out of samadhi? Surely this is a state that we're all aspiring to get to, We're all aspiring to go into the state. So why would they immediately, would they have like a certain time and say, okay, well, it's dinner time, or you've got meetings or something? Guys, sorry, Mike, do you want to jump in?
I'm pretty sure it wasn't because of dinner time, but he was, he was the head of an organization, right? So he was kicking off those projects, and a lot of the things that he did were very unconventional. And of course, those people constantly had questions. They bombarded him probably constantly with questions about, how should we do this? How should we organize this event? Where should we build the next temple? What should it look like? Like, he was still needed everywhere, right? He was also, in the beginning, he was the one who gave all the talks in the Encinitas temple. He did all the services, and then at some point he handed it over to his disciples, and there were a million questions all the time. And then imagine then he's like meditating and he's in samadhi for like 10 hours. You go like, I got a question. Like, I'm sure they worked out a system after a while where they wrote all the questions down, and then someone would go wake him up and ask him all of them. Something like that.
And then present it with a list. This is what you pick out a blissful samadhi for. Okay. Priyank?
Yeah, I can share like being in the presence of Sadhguru. I've been a few times with him, and even though Sadhguru is not in a state of samadhi, he may be like talking, or he may just be sitting still. People are still wary to approach him. So you don't really know how to behave around a spiritual master, I imagine. So in this case, it's no different. Even if he was just sitting there in silence, you probably would still be like, okay, what do you do? I need to go speak to him. As Mike says, they're running a organization, and you need to somehow get his attention, but at the same time, don't want to like disturb him if he's like speaking with Divine Mother. So like, it would be so weird to actually have to do the administration and also, have your guru and avatar right there, speaking to God in this way, and especially in samadhi.
Maybe there's a very human element to this where we can be naturally self-critical. I know I'm super self-critical, and I think that's in part a very good thing, right? And we need that. But then if you see somebody who's going into these states who's essentially, God incarnate in a sense, that can pierce through your very soul and see you for, exactly what you are and what you're not. It's a very intimidating thing in some way, egotistical way, right? So seeing him coming out of that state and then looking at you would be quite a please don't right now, soil yourself. But Leo Cox did come in with a comment after this scene, and he said that he said, and I thought, wow, this is something different. This was a little scary. So he did voice what we were all sort of thinking, that it may be a little scary. Nita, do you think you would cope well with Master coming in and out of these states and chanting Om into his ear? Is this something you would like to have witnessed at the very least?
I think I would like it.
You're brave.
Yeah, how would I feel? I'd be awed, like Mrinalini Mata said. You would just be awed, and I think I'd be stunned at it as well. When you look at it, to have that kind of presence and those vibes around you, I think it would change me, really.
Yeah.
This is the thing,
The thought of approaching a guru, like physically approaching him, is one that's not wouldn't be easy. Probably easy to talk about, but to actually do it would be quite a thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, to be put in person with that, you just think, I don't know.
Mike?
Yeah, I think what Nita just said makes a lot of sense, that it would change her as well. And I feel like a lot of people were probably changed by seeing him in the samadhi state. And that's probably something in the higher ages that you would see a lot, that you would see highly spiritual masters going in and out of samadhi. But in our time, this is very rare and like something that you would think you need to hide. But then as he progressed in age, he cared less and less about hiding or concealing that this is his true nature.
Hello guys, I'm back. My internet connection killed me for a moment there. Sorry, Nita, I did hear.
You were in samadhi, weren't you?
I fell into samadhi, and luckily somebody chanted Om.
Did Barbara start off on your right?
That's what the headphones are for. You're just constantly chanting that. So sorry about that. I hope it wasn't too disruptive.
No.
So we were talking just of Leo Cox, right, and the fear factor that may have come with Yogananda going into these states. But interestingly, we're again spoiled with another show with Mrinalini Mata comes in, and she is, in video and audio, and we see her saying, gasping that this is my guru, and she was asking, was always this going to be he going to be in this state? And she said, I would be in awe to ever approach him in this way. So really, we can see the impact of the people closest to him at the time, the devotees closest to him. It was quite a intimidating moment for them all, but it's so good that they have these reactions, right? And that they were able to include it in the documentary. I thought this was really, really nice to include. Priyank?
Yeah, this is the first view that we have, I believe, of Mrinalini Mata. And I believe she's also coming up. She's got a few more lines in the coming episodes, which we'll probably do a special on, just a bit more about her and her life. Mrinalini Mata, as most of you will know, she was the third president of Self-Realization Fellowship, and she just a couple of days ago, actually, we just had her the anniversary of her passing on the 27th of July, and Brother Chidananda shared some nice words about her, which we'll go through in the future episode. But Nita, did you ever, what is your experience of Mrinalini Mata?
Mrinalini Mata, her videos was, in his presence, that video. That was, I mean, it was a VHS then, but DVD now. That was one of the first ones that I watched, and that really captured me with what she was saying. There's so many things she said on it. When she said, for example, she said to him, Master, how will we carry on when you're gone? And he said, the teachings will be the guru. But so that really gave me confidence. And then she was saying, no, I know that, but how will we carry on? And then he was saying, he stopped for a moment and said, God and Guru, there will always be at the head of this organization men and women of divine realization, and when the time is right, all will be revealed. So that sort of when they talk about living guru, so that kind of answers a lot of questions. Yes. Sorry.
And he also says, when I'm gone, only love can take my place. It reminded me of that part of his talks as well.
Yeah.
Of course, he had just experienced his own guru passing, so I'm sure he was able to take some lessons learned from that as well, right? So he was able to apply that very well. So I did want to actually go back to this. He was going into this state, but why was he in this state? What was he doing this consciously? Was he sort of obviously we don't exactly have an answer, but I'm just wondering at your own musings. My initial thought was that he was delving into this super conscious state, this state of maybe all knowing, and pulling from that state the inspiration and the direction and the guidance that he needed to really execute in the last years that he would have, in the physical plane. So maybe he thought, okay, well, this is the time to go into that state, and I wondered from this point on, what really did he produce and one was the autobiography of a yogi. But the other books,
I
because the
think it was
lessons,
probably the Second Coming of Christ he did a lot of writing for, and most importantly the God Talks with Arjuna.
yeah, and that would have required the thing that Sri Yukteswar really taught him, which was the direct perception of intuitive knowing, that he credited Sri Yukteswar with, right? So he maybe was pulling on that ability to be able to write those papers in the way that he did. But Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think prior to him going to India, I don't think that, I mean, there were the East-West magazines, but there weren't many things published. There was Whispers from Eternity. I think that was one of his first publications, I believe. And everything else came afterwards. Autobiography was released in 1945, right? So that's still, I think, 7 years away from when they opened the Encinitas temple. So this is all coming towards the end. And I feel like that's why in the end, he spends a lot or the majority of his time writing and dictating text, right?
In the desert.
Yeah.
In the desert where you could not be disturbed.
Yeah. And talk about samadhi. Priyank, you included a poem. It's a rather long one. What did you want to read that or part of it?
I did include it.
Or did you? Sorry, Mike, you did.
I feel like because we talk about samadhi a lot in this episode, because he goes into state, if anybody wants to get into the spirit of samadhi, this poem is, of course, very famous. It's on the autobiography of a yogi. Gets you in the spirit. I don't know if we want to read it because it's very long, but everyone, maybe if you're listening to this, maybe take some time, open the autobiography and have a look at this poem. It's very beautiful. Brother Chidananda mentioned recently that's it's not news to many people, but it makes sense to memorize this poem. And he said he memorized it, and he says it's super powerful if you're in your meditation towards the end, and then you just mentally affirm this poem. It's just so powerful. And that's what I'm working on right now. I haven't committed it to memory yet, but I'm working on it.
Should we see how far you can get? Close your eyes and go.
No, let's not do that.
It'll be in some marrow of your psyche in the back there somewhere. I think all of his writings are, aren't they? They kind of come in and out of our like consciousness, don't they? Like waking consciousness every now and then. There's this teaching and there's that teaching, and
When you read that poem, like something happens, like you begin to sort of live it with him in a way. Sometimes I feel that, you know, like each little line that he says, like you begin to kind of go into it, you know, whenever it's said, and it's like music.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
it's so beautiful. It's incredible. I can read us out with the last paragraph if you guys want.
Yeah, sure. Just say thanks to Nita for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. So it's wonderful.
Pleasure having you on.
It's wonderful to be with you guys.
Yeah. Come back. Join us again. Do you want to sign us off, Mike? This is on page 164 to 166 in the autobiography of a yogi in the Kindle edition.
That's correct. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt. Go ocean of mind, I drink all creation's waves. 4 veils of solid liquid, vapor, light, lift aright. I in everything, enter the great myself, gone forever, fitful, flickering shadows of mortal memory. Spotless is my mental sky, below, ahead, and high above. Eternity and I, one united ray, a tiny bubble of laughter. I am become the sea of mirth itself.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.